My wife was expecting a baby, but it wasn't mine. My mother knew and hid it. I took care of the divorce, but it was my father who delivered the final blow. Hello, everyone. My name is Julian. I never imagined I'd end up sharing my personal life on the internet, but here I am writing this at 3 a.m. because I can't keep it inside anymore. I felt like I had everything under control until life hit me with a betrayal I didn't see coming. I'm not a writer, so please be patient if I stumble while telling the story. I'm 30 years old and a project manager at my father's solar installation company here in Phoenix. Yes, I know what many of you are thinking: nepotism. But don't jump to conclusions. I earned every promotion. I started at 15 cleaning solar panels and organizing tools as a simple helper. I learned every part of the business: electrical work, roof installation, inverters, batteries. If it had to do with solar energy, I did it. At 24, my father promoted me to project manager, not because I carried his last name, but because I delivered real results. I knew how to coordinate teams, meet deadlines, and deal with municipal permits without everything turning into chaos. Plus, the salary was decent, about $95,000 a year, plus bonuses. I bought my house 3 years before getting married, with no debt beyond the mortgage. My ex-wife Chloe is 29 and works as a nurse. She earns around $70,000 a year. I met her at a sports bar near the hospital when she was about to graduate. I thought she was focused, determined, and down to earth. I thought I had found the one. Now, to understand everything that happened, it's important to know my family. My father, Robert, is 56 and built his company from the ground up. He spent his 20s and 30s working nonstop. By 40, he was signing contracts for shopping centers and office buildings. Today, our crews work on multi-million-dollar solar farms. He has a very classic mindset. Respect is earned through hard work, not given away. Everything he achieved was through effort, and he doesn't tolerate excuses or laziness. My mother, Martha, is 54 and retired from her job in the school system. Now she spends Dad's money and gossips about others with her church friends. She acts like a saint, but is the first to criticize everyone behind their backs. And then there's my younger brother, Patrick, 26. I don't even know where to start with him. He is the reflection of everything wrong with our generation. He never held a real job. He started working with Dad doing basic tasks like scheduling appointments and managing inventory, earning $55,000 a year. Dad kept hoping he'd mature and gave him more responsibilities, but Patrick acted like he was doing us a favor just by showing up. Dad also wanted him to get tough with field work, like he did with me. He put him on the roof since he was 16. But Patrick was late, complained about everything, and hid in the air-conditioned truck while the others worked under the scorching 115 degrees Fahrenheit, 46 degrees Fahrenheit sun. I'll never forget when he was 19 and was sent to a commercial installation in July. He lasted exactly 2 hours before faking sunstroke and going home. We finished the 10-hour workday. Dad was so ashamed that the team started teasing him, calling him the delicate one. While I was training in every aspect of installation, Patrick spent his days playing video games and spending money he didn't earn. When I bought my house, he made sarcastic comments about how lucky I was. And when Dad promoted me, he said it was pure favoritism, as if I hadn't worked a decade to get there. 2 years ago, Patrick got into financial trouble. His credit cards were maxed out, and he had car payments he couldn't afford, the classic living beyond his means lifestyle. Dad loaned him $20,000 with a 2-year repayment plan. Patrick paid 3 installments, and then the excuses began. By the time this story truly begins, he was driving a leased BMW that cost more than many people's rent, wearing designer clothes, and posing as an executive when he was really just doing administrative tasks. Mom applauded him for going to work 5 days in a row while I was closing an $800,000 commercial contract. Looking back, the signs were there. But when you work 70 hours a week trying to build something solid, sometimes you don't see the snakes in your own garden. January 2023 should have been the highlight of my career. Dad secured the biggest contract in the company's history. A complete solar installation for a medical complex in downtown Phoenix worth $6 million. It was the type of project that could secure your entire life and open even bigger doors. He assigned it to me. The demands were brutal. Rigorous medical standards, daily inspections, zero margin for error or delay. We had to install solar systems on a functioning hospital where an electrical failure could literally endanger lives. I practically moved to the construction site. 12 hours a day, even weekends. There were days I arrived at 6 a.m. and left at 10 p.m. The technical part was extremely complex. A hospital needs redundant systems. We installed panels on the roof and backup systems on the ground. Every inverter had to meet hospital standards. The batteries were integrated into the emergency system. It was precision engineering, and everything had to work perfectly. Chloe initially understood. Sometimes she brought me dinner, still in her scrubs with food from the only place still open at that hour. She knew that contract could change our future. We wanted to use my bonus to finish paying off the house and start investing in properties, but while I was drowning in electrical blueprints and installation schedules, Chloe started going out more and more with a traveling nurse named Diana. According to her, Diana was fun, single, and knew all the trendy spots in Phoenix. Suddenly, my wife was out partying 3 times a week instead of our classic movie night-in routine. I should have noticed, but I was completely absorbed by work. I thought she was simply finding a way to distract herself while I was practically married to my job. The first clear sign that something was wrong appeared in February. Chloe had always had a stable schedule, 3 12-hour shifts, usually Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Our entire routine as a couple was based on that. I knew when she would be home, when we could spend time together, and how to organize around her schedule. But suddenly she started covering extra shifts constantly. Mandatory training sessions began appearing out of nowhere. Supposed emergencies at the hospital specifically required her presence. Although her official schedule remained the same, she was actually working 5 or even 6 days a week. It was precisely during that period that my brother Patrick started showing up at the house when I wasn't there. I arrived exhausted around 8 p.m., and Chloe casually mentioned that Patrick had stopped by to drop off a coffee from some fancy downtown place, or that he had helped her fix something I hadn't been able to attend to due to lack of time. At first, it didn't bother me. In fact, I saw it as a positive thing. I thought Patrick was finally behaving like part of the family. Even at work, his attitude had improved. He dressed more formally. He was punctual. He offered to work weekends. My father Robert mentioned it several times with pride, convinced that Patrick was finally maturing. I was wrong. Everything changed suddenly. Chloe started complaining that I worked too much. One night, I arrived after 9 p.m. after a brutally hard day, just wanting to eat dinner and rest while watching a bit of television. But there she was, with an attitude I could feel the moment I walked through the door. "So, this is what our marriage is now?" she snapped, before I even took off my boots. "You show up, eat the leftovers I heated up for you, and go to sleep. When was the last time we actually talked, Julian?" I tried to explain that it was temporary, that we had both agreed this contract would secure our financial stability for years, but she wouldn't listen. "I didn't marry to be a single woman with a ring on her finger," she retorted. "Other husbands make time for their wives. Others don't treat their house like a hotel. Chloe, this is a $6 million contract. We are talking about our future," I tried to reason. "Our future and my present. I'm 29, Julian. I shouldn't have to beg my own husband for attention like a desperate woman." "You're not begging for anything. You perfectly knew what this project involved when it started. I knew it was going to be demanding, but not that you would become a stranger more obsessed with solar panels than with your wife." The argument continued. Chloe acted as if I were deliberately ignoring her when I was actually working my heart out to give us stability. I tried to compensate on weekends. I brought her favorite food occasionally, but nothing was enough. In March 2023, we finished the solar installation ahead of schedule and with a $50,000 saving. We also earned a performance bonus that my father already planned to reinvest in new equipment. I thought everything would go back to normal, but by then, normal no longer existed. Although my workload drastically decreased, Chloe's schedule remained chaotic. More extra shifts, more training, more emergencies. April hit me with a brutal dose of reality. I finally had time to look at my life, and what I saw was like realizing your favorite restaurant served you cardboard all this time, but you were too busy to notice. The first serious hint was her morning routine. Chloe woke up every day at 6 a.m. and rushed to the bathroom to vomit. I'm not talking about mild nausea, but being bent over the toilet, pale and shaking. Then she would take a shower for half an hour or more. One morning I went to check on her and found her clinging to the toilet as if her life depended on it. The obvious hit me. She was pregnant. We had been trying to have a child since October 2022, so everything coincided. But when I mentioned it, her reaction was pure panic. Not a trace of joy or nervousness, only fear. She flatly denied it. She said it was a virus circulating among the nurses at the hospital, something completely illogical. Since she stopped birth control in October, Chloe tracked her cycle with an app, and we talked all the time about fertile days, ovulation, and ideal times. There was no taboo about it. She was 3 weeks late, but when I mentioned it, she reacted defensively. "Why are you tracking my period like a psychopath? I know how to manage my body, Julian." That wasn't normal between a couple trying to start a family. At the same time, my mother Martha started acting strangely. Instead of calling the landline as always, she now called Chloe's cell phone directly. And they weren't short calls. They were long, low-voiced conversations that usually occurred when Chloe was alone in the backyard or locked in the room. I managed to hear phrases like, "You have to be careful with that," or "Make sure everything is under control." If I got too close, the call ended abruptly. That was odd. My mother and Chloe had barely tolerated each other for 4 years, and suddenly they were talking in secret for over half an hour. I started paying more attention to the stories Chloe told about the hospital. They stopped making sense. She said she had worked a double shift, but arrived with energy as if she had been partying. She claimed to have assisted in surgeries, but her scrubs didn't smell like disinfectant or have blood stains, something that always happened when she truly worked in the operating room. There were also strange money movements. I discovered she had been withdrawing $200 in cash every Friday for 2 months. When I asked, she said going out with her friends had become more expensive, and she preferred to pay in cash so as not to overdo it with the card. And then there was her cell phone. She wouldn't stop texting, smiling like a teenage girl in love. But as soon as I entered the room, she turned off the screen or hid the phone. The final straw was a Tuesday in mid-April. My truck wouldn't start, so David, one of the team supervisors, brought me home earlier than usual, around 2 p.m. As soon as I opened the door, I heard laughter from the living room. Chloe was laughing in a way I hadn't heard in months. When I entered, I saw her on the sofa with Patrick. They were sitting too close for it to be normal between in-laws. As soon as they saw me, they sharply separated, as if I had caught them stealing something. Chloe looked at me, surprised. "What are you doing home so early?" Meanwhile, Patrick spilled his coffee on his shirt, stammering a ridiculous excuse about how he just happened to be passing through the area and wanted to see how Chloe was doing because I worked so much. I just wanted to make sure she was okay. "You've been very busy lately. I thought I could keep her company," Patrick said with a smile that didn't convince me at all. Chloe couldn't hold my gaze. She even commented, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, that Patrick had brought her a coffee from downtown. Very thoughtful of him, I guess. But something about all of it felt wrong. I couldn't sleep that night. I started recalling all the things that hadn't made sense over the last few months. Patrick's visits when I wasn't home, the extra shifts Chloe supposedly took at the hospital, the cash withdrawals. When you connect the dots, the pattern is obvious, and I decided I wasn't going to ignore it anymore. The next morning, I set out to find out what was really happening. The first thing was to check the company records. Patrick had access to construction sites and vehicles through our fleet management system. I pulled the GPS logs for his truck for the last 3 months and compared them with dates and locations. What I found was scandalous. Patrick had made dozens of stops in places completely unrelated to our solar installations. There were records of frequent visits to my neighborhood during work hours and to a hotel in Scottsdale that was clearly not linked to any project. Also to restaurants located in areas where we had no activity. When cross-referencing those dates with the shared calendar Chloe and I used to coordinate schedules, I discovered that every time the GPS marked his truck at one of those places, Chloe had said she was working an extra shift or had a medical emergency. I kept digging, this time into the bank movements. The $200 withdrawals on Fridays were not random. They had been happening like clockwork for over 2 months. And I also found charges at restaurants and hotels in Scottsdale on days when, according to her, she was working overtime. I started noting every inconsistency between what Chloe said and the actual expenses. On paper, the pattern was so evident that even a blind person would have noticed it. Then I decided to put everything to the test. I called the hospital pretending a family emergency, saying I urgently needed to locate Chloe. The nurse who answered told me that Chloe was not on duty that day, nor had she been scheduled the day before. However, according to Chloe, she had worked the previous night for 12 hours and was expected to have another identical shift that night. That shattered the last doubt I had. Next, I checked her email. Since our anniversary, we had shared passwords as a sign of trust. That Thursday morning, I told her I was staying home due to a supposed stomach upset. As soon as she left for her alleged training, I turned on the computer and logged into her email. The first thing I saw was an email chain between Chloe and my mother. The subject read, "Make sure Julian doesn't find out." I felt an icy knot in my stomach. I opened the thread. It was 3 months of messages discussing the relationship between Chloe and Patrick in total detail. At first, in February, the emails were cautious. Mom asked if she was sure about what she was doing, suggesting it might just be a phase, but then the messages became more calculated. My own mother was teaching her how to lie, when to fake extra shifts, what excuses to use. She even offered her house as a meeting place when Dad would be busy. One of the emails from March drove me insane. Robert plays golf on Thursdays until 6 p.m., so you have at least 4 hours. Patrick can enter through the side garage door. I'll make sure the neighbors don't see anything. Another said, "Tell Julian you have a double shift on Tuesday. Robert has meetings until 10 p.m., so the house will be empty. Patrick already said he's sleeping at the construction site that night." Later came the emails about the pregnancy. In mid-April, Chloe confirmed to Mom that she was 8 weeks along. They couldn't determine if the baby was mine or Patrick's because the timings coincided with both. My mother's response was sickening. "Make him believe it's his. He'll be a better father than Patrick anyway. What he doesn't know won't hurt him." When Chloe asked what to do if the baby resembled Patrick, my mother replied, "We'll see if that happens. For now, make everything look normal." I spent over 2 hours reading, taking screenshots, saving the most compromising messages on a USB drive, and also printing them out. They had been planning to betray me for months, believing no one would notice. They were wrong. After reviewing everything, I called Dad immediately. "I need to see you in the office now. I can't talk on the phone." 20 minutes later, we were face to face. I told him everything. He didn't say a word until I finished. Then, with a chilling calmness, he said, "See you at Mark's office in 2 hours. Don't talk to anyone until we have a plan." Mark was the company lawyer. Dad had already called him, and he had cleared his entire afternoon for us. We showed him everything: emails, bank statements, GPS logs, invoices, calendars. His conclusion was clear. With that documentation, we could act quickly to protect everything I had built. His instructions were precise: secure the money, protect the assets, document everything, and do not confront anyone until the legal backup was ready. First stop, the bank. I transferred $95,000 from the joint account to my personal account and left exactly $1,000 to avoid raising suspicion. I verified that my pre-marital investments, about $140,000 in retirement and stocks, were properly recorded as separate property out of Chloe's reach. While I was protecting mine, Dad canceled Patrick's access to company accounts and vehicles. He informed Linda, our manager, that Patrick had been reassigned and would no longer use the truck, the corporate card, or have access to the building. Patrick would find out everything on Monday when his card wouldn't work and the vehicle wouldn't start. I also blocked all joint credit cards, except for one with a $1,000 limit to prevent impulsive purchases. I removed Chloe as an authorized user on my personal cards. Every action was cold, calculated, and completely legal. That same night, while Chloe was showering, a message from Patrick arrived on her phone. "Can't wait for tomorrow at your mom's house. Dad works late, so we'll be alone." Perfect. I screenshotted it and sent it to Mark. Another piece of evidence that the relationship was still active, and then I made the final decision. I called Dad and asked him to organize a family dinner at my house for Saturday night. I didn't have to explain anything. Robert instantly understood. He called Mom and Patrick separately, telling them it was a mandatory dinner because I had an important announcement to make. On Friday, I mentioned the dinner to Chloe. I watched her entire body tense up instantly. Chloe started firing nervous questions one after another. What kind of announcement? Why did you organize a family dinner when you usually avoid these gatherings? Should I prepare something special? I replied that I simply wanted to get together to share some good news. Her face lost color. "What kind of news?" she insisted. "You're making me nervous." I just told her, "You'll find out on Saturday." That Saturday, April 29th, I prepared the dining room as if it were a battlefield. In my assigned place, I put a manila envelope with the divorce papers and another envelope destined for my father. It contained the printouts of the most compromising emails I had found. My mother, Martha, was the first to arrive. As soon as she walked through the door, she started asking about Chloe and the great news we were supposedly going to share. My father, Robert, just looked at me with an expression that said everything without words. Patrick showed up 20 minutes late, as usual, and gave me that condescending pat on the shoulder. During dinner, Chloe barely touched her food. She moved the food from one side of the plate to the other while casting uneasy glances between Patrick and me. My mother tried to maintain a superficial conversation, talking about the weather and neighborhood gossip, but the tension was almost unbearable. When we finished eating, my father raised his beer and said, "Well, son, what's this great news you wanted to share?" It was time. I pulled out the manila envelope and slowly slid it toward Chloe. "They are the divorce papers," I announced. An absolute silence took over the room. Only the hum of the air conditioning and a dog barking in the distance could be heard. Chloe turned white, her hands shaking. "What are you saying, Julian?" she asked in a trembling voice. Martha erupted into instant drama. "Julian, what are you doing? Are you crazy?" I interrupted her without raising my voice as I handed Robert the second envelope. "There you have 3 months of emails between Chloe and Patrick. Everything about their relationship." My father started reading, although he already knew part of the story. Reading the exact words impacted him differently. Patrick suddenly stood up, knocking his chair to the floor. "You checked their emails. That's illegal," he protested. "That's what you're worried about?" I replied with absolute calm. "Not that you've been sleeping with my wife for months?" Chloe burst into tears and covered her mouth. "Julian, please listen to me." I didn't even look at her. "Dad, read the part where Mom suggests taking advantage of your golf schedule so they can meet at the house." My mother lunged toward the table to snatch the papers, but Robert stopped her. "What the hell is this, Martha?" he roared with a fury that made the walls tremble. "I can explain," she stammered. "Explain what? How you destroyed this family? How you turned one son against the other? How you lied for months?" Finally, the saint facade fell. She pointed at Chloe. "She came to me. She was the one who seduced Patrick. I was just trying to avoid a bigger scandal." Patrick, without the slightest remorse, shrugged. "Everyone needs attention. Julian works 70 hours a week. I was there when he couldn't be." That's when I completely lost it. I got up, walked over to him, and threw a punch with all my strength. I broke his nose. He immediately fell to the floor, blood on his face, knocking over a side table. My mother screamed as if her precious child was being murdered. Robert stood up, imposing. "Get him out of this house, now!" Patrick lay on the floor, covering his face. "Dad, you can't do this." "You're fired, no severance. As far as I'm concerned, you're dead." "Robert, he's your son!" Martha shouted. "Julian is my son! Patrick showed today that blood means nothing if you betray your family." Chloe sobbed inconsolably. "Julian, the baby could be yours. Please don't do this." "We'll do a paternity test, but this is already over. There's nothing left between you and me." Robert looked at Patrick on the floor, then at Martha trying to help him. His face was stone. "You owe me $20,000. You have 30 days to pay it back or I'll sue you. The free ride is over. Martha, grab your coat, we're leaving. You and I have things to discuss." When they left, Chloe and I stood in silence amidst the wreckage of a broken family. "What now?" she asked. "Pack what you can and get out of this house. You have until tomorrow morning to decide where to go." "Julian, please." "It's over," I screamed. She nodded silently and went upstairs. I stayed alone in the dining room for the first time in months, and finally I felt something I had forgotten. Peace. The divorce was quick. Thanks to all the evidence I gathered and the prenuptial agreement we had signed, Chloe had no chance. Her lawyer arrived unarmed while ours carried a flamethrower. Everything I owned before the marriage remained mine: the house, the investments, the business. She tried to ask for spousal support, but my lawyer, Mark, dismissed it in minutes. In Arizona, there is no legal fault in divorce, but infidelity influences the division of assets. Furthermore, she had stable income as a nurse, and the agreement excluded any financial support. In the end, she left with her belongings, her car, and nothing else. The house remained mine. The investments were untouched. And the results of the paternity test confirmed what I already suspected. The baby was not mine. Chloe moved in with Diana, the traveling nurse who covered her during her fake shifts. But, as I learned, Diana quickly got fed up with the drama. Chloe wouldn't stop crying, demanded attention all day, and expected her friend to pay for everything while she dealt with her solitary motherhood. 6 weeks later, Diana kicked her out. For his part, my father fulfilled every threat. Patrick was permanently fired and banned from all company property, but Robert didn't stop there. He contacted other companies in the sector in Phoenix. In this business, news travels fast. He also cut off all financial support. No payments for the BMW, no credit cards, no aid. He gave him exactly 30 days to return the $20,000. When Patrick tried to negotiate, the answer was clear: pay or I'll take you to court. You decide. Chloe tried to contact me many times. I blocked her everywhere. She even came to the company to confront me, but security escorted her out. Her last attempt was a lengthy email where she blamed me for her infidelity. She said my obsession with work was what pushed her to seek affection. 6 weeks after that infernal dinner, Robert also filed for divorce. At 58, he got tired of sustaining a lie. Martha collapsed when she realized he wouldn't forgive her. The process was tough and uncompromising. My father kept the company, the house, and almost all the assets. My mother, after 15 years without working, ended up working at a department store, earning $12 an hour, facing customers who treated her as she used to treat others. Patrick went to live with her in a small apartment in a pretty run-down neighborhood. He tried to come back several times begging for his old job, but Robert's response was unwavering. "You chose to betray your own blood. Now bear the consequences." 2 years have passed since that day, and I can say without a doubt that karma has not rested for a single moment. My relationship with my father, Robert, has never been as solid as it is now. A few months ago, he decided to make me a partner in the company, granting me a 40% share. Since then, we have expanded to commercial projects in Tucson and Las Vegas, and the business is booming. But the most surprising thing happened 6 months ago. That's when I started receiving comments from some industry contacts. Patrick, my brother, had gotten into pretty serious legal trouble. After exhausting every decent job opportunity in Phoenix, he had resorted to obtaining personal loans using false information about his employment. He pretended to work at solar companies, the same ones that had banned him years ago, claiming incomes of over $60,000 annually when he was actually barely surviving on temporary, poorly paid jobs, earning maybe $15 an hour. The lending companies started cross-referencing data, discovering the lies, and exposing the fraud. According to the latest I heard, Patrick is facing federal charges for financial fraud and could spend between 3 and 5 years in prison. He never returned the $20,000 he owed my father. Robert sued him civilly and obtained a judgment in his favor. But you know what they say? You can't get blood from a stone. He's ruined, unemployed, with federal charges, and living in a studio apartment that probably costs more than he earns in a month. And as for Martha, my mother, life dealt her a blow she never saw coming. About 4 months ago, she was diagnosed with advanced and aggressive leukemia. The doctors started talking about the time she has left. The woman who for years poisoned our family relationships ended up being betrayed by her own blood. Because when you destroy all the ties around you, you end up facing the storms alone. Robert had already closed that chapter, and my relationship with her ended the day I discovered those emails. Patrick, her favorite son, whom she unconditionally protected and defended, barely shows up at the hospital. With the trial and the possibility of going to prison, I guess he doesn't have time to spare to accompany a dying mother. A neighbor told me she had been trying to contact me and my father, saying she wanted to make amends before she died. But there are bridges that, once completely burned, are not rebuilt with last-minute apologies. Robert was clear. She made her choices, and now she must live or die with the consequences. I haven't responded to any of her attempts to reach out either. The same woman who helped my ex-wife plan how to destroy my life can't now come and play the victim. Well, there was one exception. It happened 8 months ago, on a Saturday morning. I was home drinking coffee when someone knocked insistently on the door. Looking through the peephole, I saw Martha. She looked destroyed, disheveled. She had clearly been drinking. It was 10 a.m. and she could barely stand. As soon as I opened the door, she started screaming at me like a madwoman. "You're a selfish jerk. You destroyed this family. This is all your fault. You're drunk. Get off my property. Don't you dare tell me what to do. My marriage was ruined because of you. Patrick is in trouble because of you. I'm alone because of you. You want to know what really happened, Mom? You chose your golden child over the rest of us. You helped him betray me because you thought he deserved what I had built. You chose a side, and you chose wrong. That's not true. I wanted to protect everyone." "No, you protected him from the consequences, like always, and now you're paying the price." She was crying, but still trying to make me feel guilty. "He's your brother. Family forgives. How can you let me suffer like this? Family doesn't stab you in the back. You are a heartless wretch. You don't deserve to be called a mother. If you think I'm going to feel sorry for you after everything, you are wrong. Not even if you were dying would I forgive you. Do you understand?" Her face went white. Even in her state, those words shook her. I slammed the door in her face. "Julian, please." I didn't answer. I just threw the deadbolt. She kept banging and crying outside for about 10 minutes until she finally left. I didn't hear from her again until I learned about her illness. But the scene that truly marked me happened about 3 weeks ago. It was late, and I was finishing some electrical blueprints in the office when I heard knocking on the door. When I looked, I saw Patrick in an old beat-up car. I opened it, and for a moment, I didn't even recognize him. He had lost so much weight, he looked like a shadow. His clothes were wrinkled and dirty, his eyes red as if he hadn't slept in days. "Julian, I need to talk to you, brother. We have nothing to talk about. I'm going to jail. It could be 5 years. He was shaking. He could barely stand. I know I ruined everything. I know I betrayed you, but you're my brother. You're all I have left. I almost laughed. And why should I help you? Because I was an idiot. I was jealous of you, of your house, of the respect Dad has for you, of your perfect marriage. I wanted all of that, and I ruined everything in the worst possible way. He was crying like a child. He was begging me. I'm sorry, Julian. I really am sorry. I'll do anything to fix this. Just don't reject me, please. There's no way to fix this, not after what you did. Mom is dying alone. Dad won't even look at me. All I have left is you. I'll pay you back every cent. I'll work for free. I'll sign over everything I own. I looked at him for a long time. That broken figure was not the brother I once knew. And for an instant, I felt pity. Almost. You didn't just betray me. You tried to trick me into raising a child that wasn't mine. I know. It was awful. It was all a mistake. But we're family, aren't we? he said, lowering his voice to a whisper. We never were. Julian, please. You made your choices. Now live with them. I started to close the door but paused. And Patrick, don't ever show up here again. You are no longer my brother. I closed the door. Through the glass, I saw him standing there, crying like a child. After a few minutes, he got into the car and drove away. 2 weeks later, he was arrested at his apartment. His trial is next month. The most satisfying thing about all this is that I didn't have to make plans or scheme for revenge. The truth did its job. I simply focused on protecting myself. Sometimes, the best response to betrayal is just to walk away and let time and reality take their course. Today, my focus is entirely on what adds value. The company keeps growing. I have a stable home, solid investments, and above all, the peace of mind of having walked away from those who only knew how to use or hurt me. Martha faces her illness with no one to support her. Patrick, dragged down by his own decisions, prepares for a trial that will mark his life. Chloe, who once shared my bed, struggles with the weight of her mistakes turned into a daily routine. To anyone going through something similar, I say this: there are times when turning your back is not cowardice, but self-care. Not everyone deserves a second chance, and not all bonds are synonymous with loyalty. Learning to close doors doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you someone who finally understood their worth.